Now it's time to do our on-site confirmation of the flow diagram and finish up the preliminary steps. The on-site confirmation of the flow diagram, meaning we're going to check and make sure that we did that flow diagram properly, is done to ensure the products flow as shown on the flow diagram, because if they don't, then we're going to miss some steps, right? If for example we talked about the celery, if in fact we send it to the pre-prep to do it, then we need to address what could happen to it when it's over in pre-prep, such as they didn't wash their hands, didn't clean and sanitize the cutting board, that type of thing. So we're going to send some lucky soul back to the loading dock to follow the celery, the ground beef, the turkey, and the eggs from the loading dock through to the customer and see if in fact that's how the product goes. That's called on-site confirmation of the flow diagram. Did we note all the places the food could become contaminated? Those would be the control points. All those rectangles are control points. Maybe you missed some. Maybe you selected some, but the food doesn't actually ever go there, such as the chef preps the veggies, not veg prep. If you don't get this right, then you won't set the critical control points and the critical limits at the right location. So this is step one. There's a lot of, about every step I say it's the most important one. This one is certainly important, that you know exactly where the food went, and it may in fact be the most important one, because otherwise you won't get your CCPs and then set your critical limits at the right locations. So we're going to on-site physically walk through the facility and follow the flow diagram. Just hold that beautiful piece of paper in our hand and see if in fact it matches where the product went. Did in fact the celery go to veg prep where they wash it because the chef doesn't feel like doing that? Or does it go the way we described it, which was goes to veg prep? It goes to the prep table and the chef washes and cuts the lettuce. We're going to repeat it during various shifts and different times. Why? Because maybe I run the day shift, I think it ought to be this way, and Joanne runs the night shift and she thinks it ought to be that way. Well, we obviously don't like that. We're going to pick away, and that's the way we're going to do it. But it could be that during the day, I've got 1,000 customers. I can't keep up with hamburgers on the grill for that many people, so we supplement them by making a lot of the burgers in the back, and we just serve them out front. At night, she's only got 100 customers, so she can do them to order. So that would be a good reason why we do it differently on the different shifts. It may be during the day that we're preparing extra product for the evening meal, and so we may do it differently for that reason also during the day than we do at night. Make sure it's accurate, make sure it's complete, and make sure that the hazards are controlled, meaning that we've selected all of the control points that we need to address later on. So that's our 5 preliminary steps. Remember ADICO, A-D-I-C-O. The A was what? Assemble the team. The D was what? Describe the product. The I was what? Identify the intended use. The C was what? Construct a flow diagram. And the O was on-site confirmation of the flow diagram. So again, the test may say, what was the first thing you did after you put the team together? You would say, oh, ADICO. D, describe the product. Okay, that's how it's going to help you. The rest of this lecture is going to be a pop quiz. Now you can't fail, so do it honestly and don't just rush to the answer. I'm going to show you the answers, but you'll learn more if you try to figure out the answer yourself. So try to figure it out, and these are questions that may be on the certification exam. A new manager has been appointed to your dining center, and you're afraid of losing your job if you bring problems to their attention. You notice that food on the serving line is not at the proper temperature. The best long-term solution is to risk your job and report this to the new manager, discard the food immediately, follow the procedures outlined in the HACCP plan, or have the cook bring items to a higher cooking temperature. So, what do you believe the answer is there? Covered this in the first lecture, which says if this is one of the potential answers, you would always pick it, because what we want you to do is follow the procedures that have been outlined in the HACCP plan. The deal is, once we do a HACCP plan, we're not inventing anything. We don't have to think of anything. We need to follow the procedures that have been thought of when they put together the HACCP plan. So follow the procedures would always be the correct answer. Food safety problems for gravies, soups, and sauces, which are produced for later use, most frequently are caused by not reaching critical limits. During which process? So during which process would you set critical limits? During the preparation, cooling, storage, or holding? Which one is the most frequent problem? That would be cooling. Cooling is the place where we have the most issues, foodborne illness, from improper cooling. So people leave the product out at room temperature for too long and grow too many bugs. So the answer would be B, cooling. At which of the following temperature ranges presents the greatest possibility of bacterial growth when holding or storing food? So which is the worst part of the danger zone? 41 to 135, 32 to 39, 41 to 100, or 70 to 135? Which causes the greatest potential problem? And that would be 70 to 135. The danger zone is 41 to 135, but the worst part of the danger zone is 70 to 135. Foods that are prepared, cooled, and stored to be reheated for service the next day must remain out of the danger zone at all times, be cooled to 90 degrees within 4 hours, be cooled from 135 to 41 within a total of 6 hours, or be immediately placed in a freezer. That would be cooled from 135 to 41 within a total of 6 hours. Those of you that have been around a while might remember that used to be 4 hours, 2 and 2 for a total of 4. Now it's 2 and 4 for a total of 6. So you need to get the product from 135 to 70, which remember is the worst part of the danger zone. You need to get it from 135 to 70 within 2 hours. Then you have 4 more hours to get the product from 70 to 41. Conditions most likely to result in the growth of bacteria include no sneeze guard on the salad bar, low cooking temperature, walk-in coolers kept at 40 degrees, or wood fragments in a case of lettuce. Which one is likely to cause the most bacteria, the most problems? Of course, that would be low cooking temperature. If you don't cook to proper temperature, then you're going to be in deep trouble, as are your customers. So the others are problems, the biggest problems. So make sure when you take the test you think, well, which one's worse? Okay, obviously the 40 is fine. Wood fragments is not good, less likely to happen. Sneeze guards should have them, but less likely to be a problem. The most likely would be the not cooking to proper temperature. The 2009 Food Code defines the danger zone as that would be A, 41 to 135. You want to put a large cooked roast that was not used at dinner in the refrigerator. What should you do first and why? So before you put a large roast away in the refrigerator to chill down, what's the first thing you need to do, and why do you need to do that? You need to cut each roast into thirds. Place the roasts on the top shelf of the walk-in cooler. Why is that? Because it causes it to cool faster when you cut it into smaller pieces, and thus it would be in the danger zone less time. Why are you putting it on top? Because it's cooked, so you would put the uncooked products down below it. Unless you do A or and what, You won't know that your what is incorrect, and thus you won't set your CCPs and critical limits at the right places. So unless you do your on-site confirmation, you won't know that your flow diagram is incorrect, validation check or product description, flow diagram hazard analysis, control point, and flow diagram. Unless you do what, the first thing, you won't know that your what is incorrect. So that would be A. Unless you do an on-site confirmation, you won't know that your flow diagram is incorrect, and thus you won't set your critical control points and critical limits at the right places. It's relevant to the process if your customers serve themselves from a buffet, or if the food is delivered to the table by servers. The preliminary step which identifies this is called what? The intended use, the critical control point, prerequisite, or describe the product. That would be the intended use. Now make sure, might all seem logical as you're going through this course. Everything seems logical. Believe me, I've been doing this for 8 or 9 years now. When people get to the test, it's like, oh man, I thought I had it. So make sure you understand all those. What's the difference between intended use, critical control points, critical limits. Make sure you know all those, because that's what the test is going to be heavy in. So here's the last slide full of pop quiz questions, and this is, again, the reason I'm doing this is you would find some of these, not all of them, but some of them on the examination. So, what food product would we find salmonella in? Don't just wait for the answer, think of the answer, and then I'll give you the answer, but it's going to help your brain to remember if you try to answer it yourself. So that would be, salmonella would be found in poultry. E. coli would be found where? Ground beef. Staphylococcus, staph, which is toxin producing, produces toxin, which we like to call poop, would be found where? On people. Skin, nose, hands of people. That's why we don't want them blowing their nose and scratching their nose, scratching their hair. Shigella would be found where? In produce. Norovirus would be found where? Green solids, shellfish, people. And hepatitis A would be found where? Salads, sandwiches, and people poop.